Okay, this is Wednesday, European History, Period 1. Wednesday, September 9th. Okay, first of all, welcome back. Always fun in 2020. Always lots of exciting thrills, chills, and spills. Okay, yesterday, on stream, you would have seen a bit of a discussion regarding the movie clips that we saw on Friday that you saw independently. And just because you weren't here doesn't mean I'm going to try to uh, avoid getting your opinion. So, the question before you, and this is why I had you hold on to your 2001 and Heat worksheets. You can turn those in once we're done with this brief discussion. If, in fact, the Dawn of Man scene from the 2001 A Space Odyssey is the beginning picture, and the scenes that we saw from Heat is the end picture. In other words, the beginning of the story of human history in savagery, in a natural world, not of our making, that we're barely surviving, to the point of today where we have made artificial worlds of culture and civilization, of technology, that separate us and place us above nature in many respects, though not all. Um, what's to you the most interesting thing that's changed? It can be the most important, the most dangerous, and why? What is the most interesting thing that has changed from the beginning to the end? And why is it interesting to you? Does anyone not understand the question? What? Was that a hand or no?
No.
Okay. Then, one, two, yes.
Well, I think if I'm understanding this right, I think for me personally, what's really interesting is kind of like appearances and how they continue to change over time and how we continue to, update how we look and change what's
Okay,
set
are
in
you
trend
talking
currently, I
about
guess.
fashion, hygiene,
Well,
or something else?
even just hygiene, we continue to find things that will, make sure that we won't get sick as often, or we continue to, update our medicine and things like that to make sure, and our how
Hmm.
we clean ourselves to make sure that we're not going to contract diseases and things like that.
Yes, we do. We do get a sense of progress. People as late as the 1840s and 50s in the biggest city in the world, London, um, drank river water that had open raw sewage poured into it. Uh, as late as the 1950s and 60s, English cities had coal fires in people's living rooms. They had coal stoves, like some of us have wood stoves. They had coal stoves, and so you have millions, tens of millions in some cases, of coal fires burning. There's a song from World War I and World War II, "Keep the Home Fires Burning." They're talking about coal. So imagine coal smoke from millions of small fires just belching out of the little smokestacks that were in people's homes and filling the air. So our senses of what is normal and as is clean has changed. Trust me, there will be, if assuming we continue to get more civilized and more effete, there will be people in the future who say, "You actually smell the natural world with your nose? You don't put filters in?" Or something like that, because our standards of hygiene won't be theirs. So there is that, and that's a fairly logical change. I'll actually turn the heat on a little bit. That's a fairly logical change. Why? Why would we want to do that? Well, because we don't want to die needlessly. So instead of dying needlessly, we use toilet paper, which is not something that people used 200 years ago or even 150 years ago. We are prissy about the location and depth of our latrines. So yes, we try to be healthier, but we also try to balance what is reasonable with what is healthy. If we wanted to be totally healthy, we'd each live in a plastic bubble of our own. The fact is, life is dangerous. There is an element of risk in everything we do. And if I have a problem with some of the stuff that's coming out regarding fighting the current virus, it is the presumption that we can make people safe. I don't think we can do that beyond a reasonable point and still have freedom. But that's me. Have any of you ever heard the Benjamin Franklin quote? I think it's Benjamin Franklin. Those who are willing to give up their freedom for security deserve neither and uh, will have neither.
Yeah.
Say it. If I misquoted it, I have a feeling I did.
I
Because there was a both
I
and
get
a
the
neither.
feeling it's a little bit longer. I just know I've heard the
Oh, that's it. Yeah, those who would give up their freedom for security um, will lose both and deserve neither. That I think is closer. But if you can remember more, I'd love to hear it.
no. However, you have made me interested enough to look it up
Good.
once
If
again.
you look it up, come in, let me know. I may count that even as extra credit. Okay, now I'm going to roll. Aside from hygiene and associated health benefits, what is the biggest change from savagery to civilization that you think, or the most interesting change? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 4. Miss.
Um, in the 2001 movie, this like metal rectangle thing was alien, but now buildings are metal and everything technology.
Yeah. The alien monolith was alien, wasn't man-made, and it's part of the von Danikenite theory of alien interference in evolution to produce sentient life, which is an interesting idea. I'm not sure I buy it, but it's an interesting idea. Um, but yes, there's a movie that was made, I think, in the '60s called "The Gods Must Be Crazy," and it has a bunch of Bushmen from the Kalahari Desert. That's how they use a sound in their language. Um, and they live at the old Stone Age level in the midst of the Kalahari Desert. This is where the meerkats live. It's in the country of Namibia, although they do stray into South Africa as well. And in this movie, people are flying a plane overhead, and it's an open cockpit biplane, and or it has windows. In any case, they throw an empty Coke bottle out. And Coke bottles back in the day are tough. They don't break easily. So this Coke bottle lands in the desert, rolls down a hill, and survives. And suddenly, these people who had lived in an old Stone Age fashion have something new, and they all want it. And it's like the serpent in the Garden of Eden. I think it's an overly simple story, but it's a sweet story. And it talks about greed and how suddenly there's greed because there's only one of these. And everyone wants it to grind things and to use that. It's very useful. So, in that sense, we have become used to things. Plastic? Plastic's post 1960s for the most part. From the 50s and earlier, we mostly used wood for a lot of the things that we use plastic for now. Is that what you were talking about? Just the materials we use? Okay. Does anyone wish to opine another answer? Lee?
Okay, so honestly, I think it's very interesting on like how the way technology and information have been like passed on. Like, I'm pretty sure that like some of the other monkey things saw like the one dude hitting the other monkey with bones, so they like joined in with their bones and stuff. And nowadays, in modern day, we just have the internet. Stuff is recorded into giant metal boxes, and it's pretty. Oh,
It is. But here's the truly amazing thing. We developed technology that makes the Library of Alexandria look like a paltry school library collection. And over half of it's devoted to porn. Okay, what does that say about us? We have this incredible technology, and we use it for nonsense. And I'm not just porn, but also, look, I enjoy video games. When I find time, I like playing a good video game. I like playing a good RPG. But what could we be using this technology for? So yes, we have built a technology that allows instant communication around the world. One of the movies that we're certainly going to see part of later in the year is Jesus Christ Superstar. And in that, Judas sings to Jesus, who is dying, whose spirit is being resurrected. Um, you picked a strange time to appear. Israel in 4 BC had no mass communication. But actually, theologians look at history, and in some ways that's the perfect time. Jesus appears just at the beginning of the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, for almost 500 years, allows peaceful transmission of knowledge, information, and religion from the Atlantic seaboard to the borders of Iran. So that's a huge deal. And if you are a Christian and view Jesus' incarnation as the hinge of history around which everything turns, then the idea that the Roman world allows for the transmission of information better than anything before and anything in the 1,000 years after is in some ways evidence that God works through the process of history. But yes, we are inundated. We are swamped in mass communication. Are we the better for it, in your judgment?
Like,
He's doing
Stuff
this.
like Wikipedia.
He's doing this. Pick an answer, yes or no. Take a chance. Either way, it's obviously limited.
Kinda.
Yeah, but Wikipedia can any jackanapes can go on there and say the pyramids were built by flying saucer aliens, and it can stay up for a while. You could get it. And who knows? Maybe they were. What I'm afraid of, Lee, is smart machines, stupid people. Okay, that does disturb me.
Wow.
Now, there are problems with that. There are problems with the idea of self-driving cars because sooner or later, some politician, in the name of public health, is going to say, "Oh, we can't have human drivers anymore. They make too many mistakes. We can accept the mistakes that robots make, that AI makes, but not human beings because they're unpredictable." And then we no longer have the pleasure of driving. Um, that's just one example. Anyway, okay, so we are surrounded by technology and we can communicate more quickly than ever before. Whether people are actually listening is another question, too. But did I miss something or did I get your point? Okay. Does anyone, you had your hand? Yes.
Yeah, so going off of like the smart computers, stupid people,
Mhm.
I feel like nowadays the value of knowledge and actually learning is very like underrated. Whereas back then, learning something new was like exciting and like it's better. Back then, it was better to learn than just be told things. So I just feel like the evolution of the value of knowledge has really kind of fell down.
I agree with you. I'm going to tell you something about the history of knowledge. We don't become fully human until we develop the voice box. Our brain gets much bigger. We're going to I talk about this in ancient history. But the voice box allows us to sculpt sound with precision. We can make 20 or 30 phonemes that we use in the English language. And with that sculpting of sound, we can create any word symbol, any sound sculpture that can mean anything in our language. And we invent new words all the time, like Google it. Although I hate Google. With so many other things. So the development of speech is key to the development of humanity. Before the development of speech, evolution is the story of the changes in our bodies over thousands or millions, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of years. Once we develop speech, which is relatively recent, about 40,000 years ago, everything happens. We develop speech. 30,000 years later, we develop Neolithic farming, 10,000 years ago. 5,000 years after Neolithic farming, we have cities. Then we have all of the changes that have happened from ancient Egypt to now in the last 5,000 years. And that's spoken word. 500 years ago, you will learn about, in fact, you've probably already read about, the invention of Johannes Gutenberg. So what does Gutenberg invent that's so darn important? Yeah. The printing press. And 500 years ago, our civilization, the first in all the world, is changed and transformed. And we, instead of becoming people of the word, become people of the book. We become people of the written word. Bards who keep tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of lines of verse accurately in their memory, with mnemonic abilities that would make most modern people blush, suddenly are out of work because you can just buy a book with it all written down. All you need to do is be literate. The split between Catholicism and Protestantism is largely a split between a religion, Catholicism, that's oriented towards in-person ritual and the spoken word on the one hand, and Luther and Calvin, who talk about Scripture, which requires Bibles in people's possession and translations of those Bibles into the vernacular speech that people use in everyday life. The human mind changes. Human civilization transforms when we develop the book. 100 years ago, people get their first radios if they're wealthy. So suddenly they're sitting in their homes and they can hear things. It's the growth in communication. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, people get their first televisions. It's audiovisual but passive. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people get their first networked computers. And now we have audiovisual links that are interactive, where you can transmit as well as receive. We don't know how the screen, how interactive technology, and God forbid how wetware, which is directly interfacing the human nervous system with the internet or with cyber technology. We don't know what that will change about human society and the human mind. We do know that when we transitioned from the people of the word to the people of the book 500 years ago, it led to 150 years of religious war. It led to the scientific revolution. It led to the development of what we call freedom. It led to all sorts of things. We're going to be tracking that. The development of modern cyber technology makes the dreams of totalitarian control much more achievable. And in China, they're experimenting with that. In the People's Republic of China, they have a social credit system where everything that you do is tracked. And your privileges or punishments are all based on what the government sees you doing through cameras that are everywhere, through an internet that's monitored. And chipping, you know how we chip animals? They chip people. So we don't know where this is going to end. It could make things much better. It could also bring a form of hell on earth that George Orwell could only imagine. So, I don't know if that relates to what you said. I think it does.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you want to? Okay. The point of this was to give you guys a chance to contribute to a conversation that you largely observed passively yesterday. Does anyone have anything else to say about these movie clips before we move on? Okay. Then please take your movie worksheets and make sure your name's on them and put them in the period 1 shelf. Also, come up here and get one of these, which is the new chapter survey sheets.
Yeah, this happened yesterday.
I did my heat in 2001 worksheet on Cammy and then turned it in on Google Classroom.
Okay, I haven't had a chance to check that yet.
Okay.
In future, I'd like you to try to do it in paper form.
Okay. I will.
Okay. I believe in giving lumbermen jobs. I also just like reading paper better.
There.
Okay, item 2. Yesterday, you guys saw online that the chapter survey has been changed. I have eliminated the chronology section as well as one of your essays. What you see in front of you is the new form. It's basically the same as what we did, except the format is adapted to a portrait style of orientation. You've got a bit more space for each essay, but that's about it. Just wanted to see if you had any questions about this change. As of this week's assignment, Chapter 13, I would like you to use this form, so you don't have to do the other one.
So for our chapter 12 survey, are we still
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I didn't give this until yesterday. If you haven't yet turned in your Survey 12, please turn it in. And please also turn in any signatures that you have for class policies. All work should now be turned in. Yes,
So on the back side of the chapter survey,
the older the new.
old.
Yep.
So I did the wrong thing. Like I did most of it until someone told me I was doing it wrong.
Okay.
So
Well, turn in what you've got. I'll grade it as best I can. But what you should do is, remember I said yesterday, check in if you are having a question or a problem. Go to the public comment section of that assignment, ask a question, and other people may be able to help you.
Okay.
But yeah, turn in what you've got. That's it.
Just wondering, for this chapter 13, will it be due then? Will it probably always be due then Wednesday or?
It'll be due
Or
the
Monday.
Tuesday or the Monday or the Tuesday.
Okay.
The reason this week was funky is because we had Labor Day off. But it's normally due when we have normal school without COVID, we have everything due Monday in class or by 3 p.m. at latest. Now, because I have A and B day students, what I'm doing is I'm saying the due dates are Tuesday by 3 p.m. But if you're here on Monday, like you guys will be more normally, turn it in Monday. And what I want is paper turned in, if at all possible. The only people who shouldn't be turning in paper are those of you at home and those of you who are fully online, is what I mean. But even fully online people could actually manage to get paper into the school. But you don't have to. You alone can do totally online work. We'll see how that works. Give it a try. Okay. So we have gone over the 2001 in heat. We have gone over the worksheet. Towards the end of class today, you're going to have a quiz. But before we do that, let's get started on reviewing what you had with Mrs. Stembridge last year, or if you had ancient history in some other way in some other place. Our school is unusual in that we force you to take 4 years of history or social studies. Ancient medieval history and European history cover the broad story of our Western civilization. A lot of other schools that follow political fashions would have you at 9th grade take something called world history, and there's even an AP version of that. It is a horror show for a variety of reasons, mostly because you cannot, without any focus on any one civilization, world history is just too much to teach in 1 year. I used to teach world history, I know, of what I speak. In most schools in 10th grade, maybe you take U.S. history, maybe you take a civics. Very few have European history. Then there's U.S. history at 11th grade and U.S. government and politics at 12th grade. We do it differently for a very good reason. Teaching Americans to be citizens of the world strips them of their own culture. The United States is not a country of blood and soil. It is a country of ideals. What unifies us is what that flag stands for. Send us your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, says the Statue of Liberty poem by Emma Lazarus. We are the descendants, primarily, of the huddled masses yearning to breathe free that came to these shores as legal immigrants at various times in the past, and maybe some of you have immigration that comes more closely. The only people who didn't immigrate here during the time of the United States were American Indians who came here 10,000 or so years ago during an interglacial period. And so even humanity did not originate in these continents. What holds us together is common beliefs. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So writes Thomas Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence. And what he meant by pursuit of happiness is property. But Jefferson, a slave owner from Virginia, did not want to include the word property in that declaration because he wanted to get rid of slavery in 1776. But representatives of southern colonies who were fighting Britain said, if you insist on abolishing slavery, we will make our terms with Britain and the revolution will fail. Jefferson and Washington and the others had to accept that slavery would continue at least into the early republic, and it was abhorrent and repugnant to them. So rather than using the term property, which Jefferson believes is an essential part of freedom, he uses the more ambiguous term pursuit of happiness so that no slave owner can say, well, you said property. Inalienable rights. That notion means that you can't take the right away unless you are not righteously, not unless something really unusual is happening. In war, you can take the right to life away. In the Ten Commandments, Moses did not mean thou shalt not kill under any circumstances. The ancient Hebrews under Moses killed plenty of people in wartime. They also executed people for capital crimes, including violating the Sabbath. People were stoned to death. Better translation of that commandment should be, thou shalt not murder. What I'm trying to do is give you a sense of what that flag means. The truth is, though, you cannot appreciate what that flag means just by studying United States history. Because the United States did not spring like Athena out of the forehead of Zeus. The United States comes from a very definite cultural tradition. The cultural tradition known as Occidental or Western civilization. And ancient and medieval history is intended to give you a background in Western civilization up until the discovery of America by Columbus. What European history does is it takes the general history of the West from that point to the present day in its broadest sense. And this is at a time when the planet is Europeanized. So it kind of matters. The United States is a part of that process. And then at 11th grade, you study the United States and its particular variant of Western civilization. And in 12th grade, you study the political systems of the United States and our current events. So all of this means an understanding of what these ideals are that hold us together. And these ideals come from the Western tradition. As glorious as the Eastern traditions of China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, of India, in all of its various forms, of the Middle East and the Islamic world, and before that, Persia and Zoroastrianism, as interesting as the various tribal cultures are in the non-civilized areas of the world of Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Americas, the traditions that we hold dear, the traditions of freedom, of inalienable human rights, and the scope of decision-making that each of us has comes from the West and nowhere else. The Western tradition gives us the concept of inalienable rights, gives us the concept of freedom, and also gives us technology. Because the West is the first society to contact the rest of the world, map it, trade with it. And so the West, like a smorgasbord of cultures, can take ideas from other cultures and adapt it to its own. This is not a cultural appropriation. This is normal. It is normal when people encounter people of other cultures to take on aspects of that culture. And the notion of cultural appropriation is a modern straitjacket, a politically correct idea that retards people's ability to understand one another. Back when I was your age, liberals and progressives said that what we should do is be multicultural, which is we should embrace all cultures and learn about them and practice them and try them on. And today, for reasons of politics, people are afraid to do that. God forbid you dress up as Mulan and you're not Asian. God forbid you dress up as Moana on Halloween and you're not Polynesian. Liberals of my generation would consider that baffling, nonsense. The whole point is to learn about the world, and what better way to learn about the world than to put it on, to try it on like a costume. To do it with respect, but to do it with interest. squashing people's interests and shaming them never made sense to me. It still doesn't. And you can't understand history without understanding what these other cultures are. The West industrializes first. And so all of this stuff that we get from the Industrial Revolution, which we're going to study this year, the West is a unique culture. It is what we share in common. Your genetic ancestry and mine come from all over the world. But the fact remains, our culture is the American variant of Western civilization. The global culture that unifies things is largely rooted in Western ideas, certainly rooted in Western techniques, technologies, and industry. You need to understand your own culture. Jose Ortega y Gasset said that you are yourself plus your circumstances. So what this course is designed to do is introduce you to your cultural circumstances. We will start with prehistory. History is what people write down. What distinguishes archaeology from history is that archaeology is the study of people's relics, the stuff they leave behind, the things that you find in pits and in the earth. What is that? What is that thing? What does it do? Is it a scoop? Is it a knife? What purpose does this serve? And maybe they'll figure it out, and maybe they'll guess wrong. And the same is true of this pen. Oh, is this a weapon? Is this designed to hold your food like a prong? And these, what purpose do these serve? They're very inefficient knives. They're very ugly jewelry. What purpose does this serve? But with history, we can read the words of the people who were there. We can learn what was important enough for them to write down, sometimes in stone, sometimes in clay, sometimes on papyrus. So the study of history begins in misty savagery and in inexact archaeology. But when it becomes history is when we learn to write. We're going to go much more into this, and we're actually going to follow this outline starting tomorrow. But for now, those of you at home, I'm going to be shutting off the stream. Find something productive to do for the next whatever, because the people here have to take a quiz and learn about drills. So, those of you at home, ta-ta, until tomorrow. Those of you who are here,